Hello, it's me, itzanowski, and today we're going to talk about Kate Nash's butt and the capitalistic destruction of the music industry. Sounds kind of dramatic, but it kind of is.
The music industry has failed everyone.
Before we get into this, I want to make a disclaimer that, I am a Kate Nash fan, I would say. So I saw her live a couple of years ago, and I will actually go to her show here in Cologne in December. And I was planning to do so way before this whole topic arose, actually. However, even if I may voice some critical thoughts in this video or whatever, it's not coming from a place of hate or anything. So with that out of the way, let's talk about who is Kate Nash, in case you don't know. So she is a British singer-songwriter from London, and she has been making music for around 2 decades now. And she had her first, breakout hit called Foundations on her debut album Made of Bricks that came out in 2007. This song was, everywhere at the time, and it can still be heard on the radio to this day. I'm sure you know it.
My fingertips are holding onto the cracks in our foundation.
And it has over 130 million streams on Spotify, and her album reached double platinum status in the UK. So it was very successful, and she's since made multiple albums, and I've been following her journey over the years. And after a decade in the music industry, she had enough of it and started a Kickstarter campaign for her 4th album, Yesterday Was Forever. To self-fund it and have complete agency and creative freedom over it. I actually backed that campaign back then, and it's, somewhere in this apartment, I have a signed copy of that album. And I always thought that this was very badass and brave and also risky. But, more on that maybe in another video, I don't know. She also did some other stuff, like acting in the series Glow and writing the score and also starring in the musical Only Gold. And lots of other stuff. And this year, in 2024, she released her newest album, 9 Sad Symphonies, with the label Kill Rock Stars, which I was quite surprised by, but also happy to see that she found people that she's seemed to feel comfortable working with after all of that. And my favorite song on the album is Space Odyssey. I love that. And in general, I actually love her ability, to tell stories in her songs. So I find this is a very great quality. But anyway, this was just a quick rundown on who she is. And like I said, there's definitely more to say about her and her achievements. But I want you to remember that Kate Nash is not some nobody. This woman is very talented and has had a 2-decade-long career in music and has a solid fan base. So why are we talking about her? Kate Nash is currently touring, and touring is expensive, and it has become even more expensive over the last few years. Now you might think, well, okay, everything became more expensive, ticket prices, for example, and surely some of that money goes to the artists, right? So, I will read from an article in Paste magazine where Kate Nash also gave an interview. Consider that the average ticket price in North America rose by 23% between 2022 and 2023, a trend that does not seem to be abating. But at the same time, artists aren't necessarily earning more from live performances. A survey conducted by Pirate.com found that 54% of artists are making the same amount of money from show fees, as they did a couple of years ago, while 29% are actually receiving less money than they did in the past, despite the higher prices for tickets. So what we currently see a lot of is, big stadium tours with astronomical ticket prices. And of course, the queen of these tours is Miss Taylor Swift, making hundreds of millions of dollars with her Eras tour. So, checkmate. That shows there is a lot of money to be made in the industry. So, what's the problem? It's capitalism. So, question. Are you well off because people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk have billions of dollars? If they make another billion, does that mean you get money as well? So the reason why I'm comparing Taylor Swift and Elon Musk here is, that they are on top of the capitalistic pyramids. So Elon Musk in general and Taylor Swift as a musician, they are the 0.00001% on the top. And, despite there only being a very small percentage of people at the top of the pyramid, their earnings actually look like an upside down pyramid. So very few people get the vast majority of the money, and the vast majority of people get the leftovers. So the money is by no means distributed equally. Because that, my friends, would be communism, and we would all go up in flames. And that was sarcasm, of course. So, of course, your earnings as an artist are tied to your popularity. That's a separate discussion we could have about the worth of art, etc. But in the system, it's all about supply and demand. And, if you and the art you put out are popular and, liked by many people, then this makes you more successful as an artist. So, at least in theory. Because, even if you are popular, measured by followers online or even streams on platforms like Spotify, you might not be successful when it comes to money. And before anyone says something along the lines of, well, if you are just in it for the money, you're not a real artist. Have you considered that people need housing, food, basic necessities like any human? Creating art is work, and in my humble opinion, work should always be paid fairly and, at least guarantee that someone could live off of it. And also be able to reinvest in their business. Being a full-time touring musician with a band and crew and people helping you with that makes you kind of a business owner on top of being a musician. This is not a one-person endeavor. Let's compare it to someone having a small craft business. You would hopefully agree that even if it started out as a one-person business, if it grows, you will need further employees you need to pay. You have to pay rent for your workshop, for example, and, invest in new machinery. And it's kind of the same with musicians. And I hope this example makes it a bit easier to understand that art is a craft and, requires investments as well. And now, back to Kate Nash, actually. She might be an artist that is known by many people, but she is by no means as popular as Taylor Swift or Billie Eilish or, other mainstream pop girls. And she doesn't draw the same crowds to a stadium tour. But, that's fine. That's okay. You can still do shows in smaller venues. I personally love club shows, and I enjoy them way more than those, massive stadium shows. The problem is
125 venues in the UK closed last year. It's a lot of fucking venues, mate.
Well, that's unfortunate. There's a massive financial strain on smaller venues, smaller artists, and, grassroots culture, as Kate calls it.
I'm outside Live Nation in London, who last year had an annual revenue of 22.749 billion. Live Nation are the main hold-up in the government's recommendation to give £1 per arena and stadium ticket to the Grassroots, who are in crisis. Here I am outside the Spotify building. Shareholders cashed out over 419 million between them. Artists are paid 0.003 of a penny per stream.
Regarding grassroots culture, I want to say that, I am active in the DIY scene here in Germany, and there are a lot of shows with local bands, bands from Germany, from all over Germany, sometimes DIY bands from other countries. And, none of these bands and people I know, at least as far as I am aware, is trying to live off of their music. For us, this is a hobby, and many bands play just for some gas money, a nice meal, drinks, and a place to stay the night. And, that is fine, and that's a choice we make. We usually have regular jobs and then, play fun shows on weekends. And I'm sure that there are bands hoping that this is just a start and one day they could actually live off of it. But that's difficult, and, especially if ticket prices are 5 to 15 euros at these shows. But on the other hand, this makes live shows very accessible for people who would never be able to afford big arena tour level pricing. And some of these bands are incredibly good, so there's also not necessarily a correlation between quality of music and ticket prices. Just as a side note. So the DIY scene is probably the absolute root of grassroots culture. And, then there's the smaller venues who make money with art. And that is not a bad thing. Booking and organizing shows takes time. And, employees at the bar, the entrance, catering, etc. all cost money. Artists cost money, and artists need money to fund their livelihoods and keep their businesses running. So, paying the crew, the tour bus, all of that. And I say it again, people need to be compensated fairly and appropriately for their work. And there are artists who don't pay their crew well or at all, and their tour buses might be too full, to be considered safe, or their shows might just become worse because they might have to compromise on certain things. Kate Nash did not want to accept that, but she needed money. So to fund her tour, she created an OnlyFans account, posting pictures of her butt. Hence, butts for tour buses. And this shook the internet. She was on the front page of Reddit for 2 days and gave many interviews, went on TV. And, people, when they heard about that, they were shocked and saddened and outraged that she would resolve to sex work instead of, compromising on some aspects of her tour. And, before continuing to talk about what Kate had to say about it, I want to say a few words about sex work and OnlyFans. While I believe that the platform, or different platforms like OnlyFans can be empowering and the right choice for some people, I also believe that there are many who do it out of desperation or false hopes and who do not feel empowered by it. And, the same goes for non-digital sex work. So there are for sure people who like doing it, and it sucks for them that there's a huge stigma attached to it. But this industry has also had a long history of, forced prostitution, human trafficking, human rights violations. And in my opinion, this whole topic is, much more nuanced than just saying sex work is good or it's bad. Some people were shocked by Kate's decision and said they were sad she needed to do this. And to that, Kate has responded saying it's not sad because it was her decision and she finds it empowering and funny because it's all about her butt, and butts are kind of funny. And I get that, but I am also kind of sad about the whole thing. Not that Kate is selling pics of her butt. She has a great butt, she can do whatever. But more in the sense of, man, it sucks that she has to look for an additional source of income that is not music related to be able to afford to work as a musician. Or to put it more simply, why does the Kate Nash need a side hustle? Some of it has to do with the fact that most people nowadays consume music via streaming services, but these services don't pay artists well, or at all if you're a very small artist. And Kate herself has said, don't bother helping me by streaming my music. They can keep my 0.003 cents per stream. It's nothing. And basically, as a musician nowadays, you get almost nothing from people consuming your product, so the music. And, it's no wonder they are struggling financially. She has also said she will most likely earn more money from her OnlyFans than from her tour. And Kate has also brought up another very good point that is, of course, related. The music industry is very classist.
They don't care about working class people, and I think that's a disgrace.
On the one hand, people don't need a label anymore to put out music. Everybody has the opportunity to make music and also get it published, via services like I use, DistroKid, for example. And, while this is true, it doesn't mean many can afford to make music their job and invest lots of time in it. Sure, you can make music after work and on weekends, but it's much easier, and you have way more time and are less exhausted if you can focus on it. And, with going on tour, that it's also much easier for you, because you don't have to fit that into your paid time off or quit your job and, find a new one once you return. And it's really important to keep in mind that we're talking about surviving here. So we're not talking about, living a luxurious lifestyle, or we're also talking about just having the money to invest in your business, because in order to gain more popularity, you have to play shows, and then, how you have to go on tour to play more shows, and that all costs a lot of money. And if you have none, well, tough luck. Or you have to go into debt. Kate Nash is also doing that.
The music industry has failed everyone. And I think that's really important to say, because if you're an artist out there and you're like, oh my God, I'm a failure, I'm not doing well, like, how are they doing this? Or how's she going on tour in the US? Mate, I'm going into debt, which I am in a unique position of being able to do, because I had a #1 record and I save up a nest egg in the summer so that I can blow all my savings on my music career. So you're not failing. The music industry has failed you. It is collapsing. Find a way to fund your music, whatever that takes. I respect it. I've sold Star Wars jewelry in comic book shops on live streams before. I will do what it takes to get music out there, and I respect anyone like trying to make it work, because art is really important. It's one of the most important things in the world, and music should be valued. It just should be valued, and fans value it. That's why there's Kickstarters, and that's why people are going to shows. Tickets are more expensive than they've ever been. People go on to festivals instead of going on holiday. People love music, and there's also people profiting in the millions, and that's the major labels and the streaming services. Meanwhile, artists are making 0.003 of a penny off of streaming platforms, and 80% of music on Spotify has been demonetized. So what's up with that?
And like she said, not everyone can just go into debt and actually get that loan from a bank. And if you're already well off, or, at least your family is, and, they can fund your artistic endeavors, that helps. It makes it easier for the wealthy and harder for the poor. And Kate says that this means seeing less and less working class people in the music industry. So, I mean, question, do you only want to hear stories about how hard life can be from a bunch of millionaires? I don't. Oftentimes we connect more with stories from lives that are similar to ours. But, apart from the relatability of the music, that just sucks, because making art should not be a privilege only the rich can afford to enjoy. And Kate has also said that she commends people who find a way to do something to fund their music career. And there is no shame in putting in extra work because the system has failed you. At least there is no shame for the musicians, I think, because we should maybe start shaming the industry and start with streaming services. I switched to Tidal a couple of years ago because they pay, I think, the most out of all of the streaming services, but, it's still almost nothing, so don't know how much it helps. And, I did some math here. Granted, I'm not very good at it, but let's say if you pay 10 euros a month for a Spotify subscription and artists get 0.003 cents per stream, that makes 333,000, etc. streams that your money could buy. A typical song is 3 minutes long. So you could stream 333 times for 3 minutes, which adds up to 1 million minutes of music. Divided by 30 days of a month, you could listen to 33,000 minutes of music every day. Except you can't, because one day only has 1,440 minutes. So even if you subtract all of the costs a company might have, or does have for employees, infrastructure, marketing, and let's say you're very generous with it, this minuscule amount of money per stream is still ridiculous, and it's absolutely no wonder artists cannot live off of their music like this. You can go to Bandcamp and, buy an artist's digital album or merch there, but I totally get that we are just used to streaming music now, and I am no different. But something has to change. And speaking of change, actually some good news. Last week, the British Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport in the UK said in Parliament that if the music industry doesn't voluntarily implement a levy and, on arena and stadium tickets, the government will have to act. So, for example, for every big stadium ticket sold, £1 would go to a fund for struggling smaller venues to keep them and the music scene alive. And I think that is great news, and I am all for it. And, once that is done, let's find a solution for streaming. At the end of the day, I want streaming companies to pay musicians their fair share, and, I will continue to go to smaller shows and buy some merch there. And I will also support some artists on other platforms like Patreon. And if you can, please consider doing the same. And, even subscribing to Butts for Tour Buses if you're interested. So, rant over for today. What do you think of this? Should art be a rich people thing? Should we all just listen to the most popular stuff and, everything else has no value? And what would you be willing to do to fund your dreams? Let me know in the comments. Time for the bonus cat. Cat, but for tour buses. Bye.